It is Sunday morning, and again we're gathered virtually to worship. When the pandemic forced us to expand our ideas and definitions of what it means to be together, it really felt strange. Now, over a year later, we're realizing that sending out our weekly assembly to the entire world, thanks to Facebook and YouTube, it feels genuine and authentic, even without seeing one. We begin this morning with a greeting by the Reverend Erica Hewitt called, "We Too Were Once Seeking Home." She writes, "We welcome all of you to our morning assembly, especially those who are seeking a spiritual home. Many of us were once too seeking for something larger than ourselves to which we could belong, a sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that well here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. Whether this is your first time in worship with us or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find here questions that will stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in loving boldly, living justly, and welcoming radically." At this hour, watching in our living rooms and kitchens, on tablets outdoors in parks, hiking trails, small towns, big cities, and single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, Unitarian Universalists are lighting a virtual flaming chalice. As we light our chalice, let us remember we are part of a greater faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist principles of love, justice, and truth. Red River UU's first worship gathering was held 24 years ago. It began by speaking a brief statement, neither a creed nor a declaration of belief, rather 3 or 4 reminders that make an affirmation for living. The words are on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. If you are anything like our guest speaker today, you love reading books. And if you happen to also be an author, reading books may well be part of your vocation as well as your pastime. Marion Moore Hill is both and is drawn to authors who enrich her understanding of life at the same time they make her laugh out loud. Marion speaks to us today about Anne Lamott, who is one such author. Marion concurs with Lamott's description of the reason she writes. "I try to write books I would love to come upon that are honest, concerned with real lives, human hearts, spiritual transformation, families, secrets, wonder, craziness, and that can make me laugh. When I'm reading a book like this, I feel rich and profoundly relieved to be in the presence of someone who will share the truth with me and throw the lights on a little, and I try to write these kinds of books. Books, for me, are medicine." Lamott is an American novelist and nonfiction writer. She is also a progressive political activist, public speaker, and writing teacher. She's based in Marin County, California. Her nonfiction works are largely autobiographical. Marked by their self-deprecating humor and openness, Lamott's writings cover such subjects as alcoholism, single motherhood, depression, and Christianity. She has one son, Sam, who was born in 1989, and a grandson, Jax, born in July of 2009.
can call our very own.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found our need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer.
A child is born among us, and we feel a special glow.
We see time's endless journey as we watch the baby grow.
We thrill to hear imagination freely running wild.
We dedicate our minds and heart to the spirit of this child.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found the time to be together. And with the grace of age, we share the wonder of youth, and we believe that growing is an answer.
Our lives are full of wonder, and our time is very brief.
The death of one among us fills us all with pain and grief.
But as we live, so shall we die, and when our lives are done,
The memories we share with friends, they will linger on and on.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow, we have the gift to believe, and peace within our living is an answer.
we seek elusive answers to the questions of this life.
We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife.
We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind.
And then we come together here to make sense of what we find.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found the joy of being together. And in our search for peace, may we finally see, even to question truly is an answer.
Our first reading is a composite of selections from Operating Instructions, a journal of my son's first year, by Anne Lamott. Having a baby is a terrible drain on their resources, Anne Lamott says. I had no idea. I'm not suggesting he's a deadbeat, but I must say he's not bringing in any money on his own. Lately, he sits around in his underwear all day playing the harmonica, which is great. I approve of that instrument. I want him to be able to play the blues. But still, it's so expensive and time-consuming to have a baby. You might as well keep hothouse orchids. At least you could sell them. I wonder if it's normal for a mother to adore her baby so desperately and at the same time think about choking him or maybe throwing him down the stairs. It's incredible to be this tired and yet to have to go through several hours of colic every night. It would be awful enough to deal with this if you were feeling healthy and upbeat. But then Lamott says, one thing about Sam, one thing about having a baby, is that each step of the way you simply cannot imagine loving him any more than you already do because you are bursting with love, loving as much as you're humanly possible. And then you do love him even more. I don't remember who said this, but there really are places in the heart that you don't even know existed until you love a child. For our practices today, 2 prayers from our author du jour, Anne Lamott. Both are from the book Traveling Mercies. Here are the 2 best prayers I know. Help me, help me, help me, and thank you, thank you, thank you. A woman I know, for her morning prayer, whatever, and then for the evening, oh well, but has conceded that these prayers are more palatable for people without children. Join me for a time of stillness.
What are we to each other? Are we friends or something more? Even before I knew you, we were bound, and that's for sure. Bound to sail, bound to sink, you were bound to swim away one day. You are a bright reflection of the best that I could be, and not because of our likeness or the things you've learned from me and taught to me when you talked to me and when you walked away. Some days, always we are ever bound. I'd never tried to hold you, tried to keep you in one place. I'd rather stand back and watch your life unfold with perfect grace, perfect timing, perfect love. Let you be perfectly free, as perfect as we will never be. Though bound we are, bound we are, we are ever bound. Here we are, both alive for a time. You were mine. If you stay, if you go, I trust that you'll always know we're bound. We are bound. we are ever bound.
Marion has selected 2 more short readings from Anne Lamott. The first is from Almost Everything, Notes on Hope. Almost everyone is screwed up, broken, clingy, scared, and yet designed for joy. Even or especially people who seem to have it more or less together are more like the rest of us than you would like to believe. I try not to compare my insides to their outsides, because this makes me much worse than I already am, and if I get to know them, they turn out to have plenty of irritability and shadow of their own. This is good news that almost everyone is petty, narcissistic, secretly insecure, and in it for themselves, because a few of the funny ones may actually long to be friends with you and me. They can be real with us, the greatest relief. That we are designed for joy is exhilarating, within reach, now or perhaps later today after a nap, as long as we do not mistake excitement for joy. Joy is good cheer. My partner says joy and curiosity are the same thing. Joy is always a surprise and often a decision. Joy is portable. Joy is a habit. And these days it can be a radical act. And this from Stitches. I wish there were shortcuts to wisdom and self-knowledge, cuter abscesses or 3-day spa wilderness experiences. Sadly, it doesn't exist that way, and I so resent this. The American way is not to need help, but to help. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn was that I was going to need a lot of help, and for a long time. What saved me was what I found: gentle, loyal, and hilarious companions, which is at the heart of meaning. Maybe we don't find a lot of answers to life's tougher questions, but if we find a few true friends, that's even better. They help you see who you truly are, which is not always the loveliest possible version of yourself. But then comes the greatest miracle of all. They still love you. They keep your company, as perhaps you would become less of a whiny baby if you accept their help. And that is so much easier said than done.
Good morning. I'm Marion Hill, a charter member of Red River Unitarian Universalist Church, and I'm speaking this morning about Anne Lamott, one of my favorite writers. Since this is Mother's Day, it seems appropriate that a lot of the quotes I'll be using have to do with the fact that she's a mother and grandmother, and of course, a daughter. Mothering has been the richest experience of my life, she says, but I am still opposed to Mother's Day. It perpetuates the dangerous idea that all parents are somehow superior to non-parents. No one is more sentimentalized in America than mothers on Mother's Day, but no one is more often blamed for the culture's bad people and bad behavior. You want to give me chocolate and flowers? That would be great. I love them both. I just don't want them out of guilt, and I don't want them if you're not going to give them to all the people who helped mother our children. Lamott was a single mother, but found a succession of surrogate parents for her son, including friends of hers who were both women and gay men. She herself was mothered by many of her friends' mothers when her own parent was unavailable or couldn't give her what she needed. Her parents were intellectuals, activists for social causes, and admirable people in many ways. Unfortunately, Anne says, they should have raised Yorkies instead of children. Anne was the middle child between her 2 brothers. She adored her father, Kenneth Lamott, who was also a writer, but initially bought into his criticisms of her mother, who had been slim and beautiful when they'd married, but after having 3 children had gained weight and he no longer found her attractive. About her mother, whom she found too subservient to her father, Anne says, "She is not at all whom I would have picked at the Neiman Marcus mommy salon. I would have chosen someone tall, elegant, and physical. I would have chosen someone with a ferocious belief in herself and God and me." Anne gained more respect for her mother when she found the courage to leave the unhappy marriage, move to Hawaii, and establish the state's first ever woman-led law firm. Anne brought her mother to live closer to her in her old age and spoke of how much she loved her, even as she still found her annoying. Both Lamott parents set high standards for their children and were inclined to withhold praise for anything less than perfection. Anne got high marks in school and also won prizes playing tennis. But if she came home with a B+ in a subject, she was asked, how much more effort would it have taken to get an A? I was an adult, Anne says, before I realized that a B+ is a really good grade. When Anne finally got onto the New York Times bestseller list, something both she and her father had struggled to do for years, he apparently never made it, she called her mother to tell her, "Mom, I made it. I made the list." Her mother simply replied, "Huh, what else?" I tell you, Lamott says, families are definitely the training ground for forgiveness. But she disagrees with the statement that we can't forgive others until we forgive ourselves. People like to say all sorts of such stupid bumper sticker things that aren't true, she says, and that, in fact, can be shaming, such as that God never gives us more than we can handle. What a crock. My friend Mary says that you should never give God any idea of how much you might be able to bear. Lowball him, like a trainer at the gym who thinks you might be able to lift a heavier weight. Say that you injured your lower back doing that once. Hint at liability. I have forgiven most people who have hurt me or behaved atrociously to those I love, although there is one extended family member who, I'm positive, makes Jesus sick to his stomach. Yet from time to time I forgive myself for being a bad forgiver. Forgiving ourselves is the advanced practice. It's senior life-saving. Since Anne's parents were atheists, many people find it odd that she's religious. Anne agrees. It's odd to me that I'm religious. I never meant to be. I don't quite know how it happened. I think that at some point a long time ago, I made a decision to believe. And then every step of the way, even through the worst of it, the 2 years my dad was sick with brain cancer, the last few years of my drinking, I could feel the presence of something I could turn to, something that would keep me company, give me courage, be there with me. When people used to say shit like this to me, I'd look at them politely and think, well, isn't that special? Did we take our meds this money? And feeling herself a failure, she got into the habit of stopping by St. Andrew Presbyterian, which she describes as a little black church on Sundays, one that was near a flea market she liked. At first, she lurked in the back and would leave before the service was over because she didn't want people to touch her or try to make her feel better. After she got sober and did start to feel okay about herself, she would stay to the end and get hugged. Sometimes, she says, I'd be so sick from cocaine and alcohol that my head would be spinning, but these people were so confused that they thought I was a child of God. When her son was born a few years after she began attending there, he was out of wedlock since she'd had a succession of lovers but no husband. The people of her little church welcomed them both and called Sam our baby. Anne says of St. Andrew, our funky little church is filled with people who are working for peace and freedom, who are out there on the streets and inside praying, and they are home writing letters, and they are at the shelters with giant platters of food. When I was at the end of my rope, the people at St. Andrew tied a knot in it for me and helped me hold on. The church became my home in the old meaning of home. that it's where, when you show up, they have to let you in. They let me in. They even said, "You come back now." Anne Lamott writes openly about her life, including her struggles with addiction. She began drinking when she was a child, finishing the dregs in the glasses after her parents' parties, and by the time she was 20, she realized she had a problem. As she expresses it, "My mind and spirits and behavior were deteriorating faster than I could lower my standards." But typically, for anyone who's truly addicted to anything, Lamott didn't want to quit. She tried cutting back, telling herself she'd limit herself to just 2 beers a day, but she found that she went through 2 regular beers way too quickly. So she began drinking 2 16-ounce Rainier ales. Now, Rainier ale is fortified, she says. It's the beer with the merest hint of raw alcohol added. It is to beer as Night Train is to wine. It gets you very drunk, very quickly, and it's cheap. What's not to love? Okay, she goes on, maybe the taste. Not all people happen to love the taste of rye bread soaked in goat urine. I myself don't mind it. Lamott also did other drugs, marijuana, cocaine, pills, though alcohol was her drug of choice. She did finally get sober and let a bunch of sober alcoholics befriend her and tell her hilarious stories of their own attempts to get and stay sober. Kindness anywhere gives me hope, she says. It changes us. Those who were sober never gave up on anyone. I am Exhibit A, and so I don't either, ever. Lamott knows herself to have an addictive personality, so she's very careful to avoid anything that might get a hold on her. At one point, when her son Sam was a baby, she said he loved his pacifier so much that she tried it herself one day. I sat there sucking on it while I watched TV, and then I threw it down in fear, absolutely convinced, old addict that I am, that I'd get hooked immediately. By the end of the week, I'd be abusing it, lying about how often I was using it, hiding it in the hamper. When she took her son for his regular checkup, she told the doctor about the colic he'd been having nightly. The doctor said that if the colic was severe, he would prescribe a drug with a little belladonna in it. She said that at first she was tempted to lie about the colic severity to get my son some drugs, but said to the doctor, No, I don't think so. You see, I'm an addict. It's been 3 years that I've been clean and sober, and I just don't feel okay about the drugs." The doctor, clearly assuming she was a bit dense, said to me very patiently, very gently, "Oh, but you see, you wouldn't be taking the drugs. You would give them to your baby." She goes on to say, "There's a part of me that doesn't trust that I would give him the right amount. I have never once in my life taken the prescribed dosage. I even abused the kiddies' ear mite medicine, spraying 3 little blasts instead of the prescribed 2. At least I don't use it on myself, yet." There are times in our lives, she says, scary, unsettling times, when we know that we need help or answers, but we're not sure what kind, or even what the problem or question is. We look and look, tearing apart our lives like we're searching for car keys in our couch, and we come up empty-handed. Then, when we're doing something stupid, like staring at the dog's mismatched paws, we stumble across what we needed to find, or even better, it finds us. It wasn't what we were looking or hoping for, which was usually advice, approval, an advantage, safety, or relief from pain, but somehow it helps. Where then do I turn in these increasingly frightening days? Where do I look for answers when I'm afraid or confused or numb? More often than not, the North Star that guides me through the darkness is the Old Testament prophet Micah. He must have looked like a complete stoner or a Game of Thrones extra, yet nearly 3,000 years ago, he spoke the words that often remind me of my path and purpose. What doth God require of thee but to do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly with thy God? Oh, is that all? Justice, mercy, and humility. That's nice. Right off the bat, I can tell you that walk humbly with thy God is not going to happen anytime soon for me or my closest friends. Arrogance are us. My humility can kick your humility's butt. What Micah is talking about is grad school curriculum. While spiritually speaking, I remain in junior high school, superior and cringing at the same time. And to do justice may be a trick, since we all think we do this anyway. We think that if our values aren't the correct ones, we would have other ones, which would then be the correct ones. Mercy is radical kindness. Mercy means offering or being offered aid in desperate straits. Mercy is not deserved. It involves forgiving the unforgivable. Mercy brings us to the miracle of apology, given and accepted, to unashamed humility when we have erred or forgotten. In the words of Candy Staton's great gospel song, Hallelujah Anyway. Hallelujah that in spite of it all, there is love, there is singing, nature, laughing, mercy. Mercy means that we soften ever so slightly so that we don't have to condemn others for being total shits, although they may be that. Okay, or if I do so, it makes me one. I want to want this softening, this surrender, this happiness. Can I get a partial credit for that? When we manage a flash of mercy for someone we don't like, especially a truly awful person, including ourselves, we experience a great spiritual moment, a new point of view that can make us gasp. It gives us the chance to rediscover something both old and original, the sweet child in us. What's the catch? The catch is that there is no catch. This is so subversive. Finding ways to show mercy both to others and ourselves constantly is necessary, she says. Not only is everyone screwed up, but everyone screws up. How can we know all this, yet somehow experience joy? Because that's how we're designed, for awareness and curiosity. We see this toward the end of many people's lives when everything in their wasted bodies fights to stay alive for a few more kisses or bites of ice cream, one more hour with you. Life is still flowing through them. Life is them. Some of us periodically need to repeat the joy training, rehabilitate the part of us that naturally dims or gets injured by busyness or just by too much bad news to bear. Adults rarely have the imagination or energy of children, but we do have one another and nature and old black and white movies and the ultimate secret weapon, books. Books! To fling myself into a book, to be carried away to another world while being at my most grounded on my butt or in my bed or favorite chair is literally how I have survived being here at all. I remember lines from A Wrinkle in Time from 55 years ago. Only a fool is not afraid. Plopped in my chair, I get to be elsewhere, immersed in humanity, exclaiming in silence, yes, that's just the way it is, or thank God it's not that way for me. I get taken out of myself, and I get to salute all the people and experiences I recognize with surprise and pleasure. This reactivates the giddiness muscle, and giddiness leaves you almost no choice but to share, and sharing is what makes us happy. She says that now, when I feel like I'm coming apart like a $2 watch, it helps me beyond words to look at myself through the eyes of Mary, who is one of the black women congregants at St. Andrew Presbyterian. Mary is totally adoring and gentle. Lamott says that many people look at her through critical eyes and don't see her as a beautiful, precious, heroic child. but Mary does. In her book, Operating Instructions, a journal of my son's first year, Lamott tells us of the difficulties of raising a child by herself, especially when Sam experienced that nightly colic, until someone told her to try leaving off both wheat and dairy out of her own diet while she was nursing him. That worked. Sam sleeps for 4 hours in a stretch now, she says, which is one of the main reasons I've decided to keep him. Also, he lies by himself on the bed, staring and kicking and cooing for 15 or 20 minutes at a time. I had these fears late at night when I was pregnant that I wouldn't be able to really love him and that there's something missing in me. That half the time I'd feel about him like he was a pet rock, and half the time I'd be wishing I never had him. So there must have been some kind of a miracle. I never ever wish I hadn't had him. But I do sometimes wish I had a husband and a full-time nanny, and that I could still have a few drinks now and then. I am coming up on 3.5 years clean and sober. The memories are still very clear of how lost and debauched and secretly sad my 20s and early 30s were, how sick and anxious I felt every morning. I thought at the time that I was having a lot of fun, except that the mornings were really pretty terrible. But there are still times when these movies start to play in my head, where I see myself putting the baby down to sleep and then sitting and sipping one big, delicious scotch on the rocks. Just sipping. I just want that kind of relief, that smoothing of the sharp edges. The only fly in the ointment is that if I went to a liquor store and put some money on the counter for a bottle of good whiskey, I might as well put Sam on the counter too, because I know I will lose him if I start drinking again. I know I would lose every single thing in my life that is of any real value. I couldn't take decent care of cats when I was drinking. They'd run off or get hit by cars or get stolen. I'd forget to leave windows open for them or wouldn't come home for a couple of nights in a row. So I don't know. I guess I won't have a drink today. Maybe tomorrow. Probably tomorrow, but not today. And of course, that's exactly the way that people in Alcoholics Anonymous manage their own recovery, one day at a time. I'm going to be extremely gentle and forgiving with myself today, she says, having decided while I nursed Sam at dawn this morning that I'm probably just as good a mother as the next repressed, obsessive-compulsive paranoiac. I think we're all pretty crazy on this bus. I'm not sure I know anyone who's got all the dots on his or her dice. Little by little, I think I'm letting go of believing that I'm in charge, that I'm God's assistant football coach. It's so incredibly hard to let go of one's passion for control. It seems like if you stop managing and controlling, everything will spin off into total pandemonium, and it will be all your fault. I know the solution is to slow down and breathe and learn to pay attention. My friend Bonnie's kids went to a kindergarten with a sign over the front door that said, "Start out slow and taper off." It's so easy and natural to race around too much, letting days pass in a whirl of being busy and mildly irritated, getting fixed on solutions to things that turn out to have been just farts in the windstorm. Our culture encourages this kind of behavior. That's why we call it the rat race. Some days I get stoned on the pace, but today it's making me incredibly sad. That's probably a healthy sign. Lamott is married now, happily, to a man she met in 2016. I saw high intelligence in his eyes, she says, and large, beautiful hands. But, as she notes, marriage is one long series of compromises, a statement that any of us who have been married a long time can attest to. Our bitter, hard, screwed-up places spool out over time in a marriage or intimate relationship, Lamott says. Our crazy inside person shows. "You can still love me now?" she asks. "Really? Does my family slip you a little something every month?" Of the past few years in the United States, Lamott says, this country has felt more stunned and doomed than at any time since the assassinations of the 1960s and the Vietnam War. And while a sense of foreboding may be appropriate, the hate is not. At some point, the hate becomes an elective. I was becoming insane, letting politicians get me whipped up into visions of revenge, perp walks, jail. And this was satisfying for a time, but it didn't work as a drug, neither calming nor animating me. There is no beauty or safety in hatred. As a long-term strategy, it's doomed. Lamott still attends St. Andrew and recalls that one morning the pastor, Veronica, cited the Dr. King quotation that hate cannot drive out hate, only love can. She initially thought, I heard it the first time, but at the end of the sermon the pastor said with a sigh, just don't let them get you to hate them. I have not been the same since, Lamott says. She ruined hate for me. No one can take this hatred off me, she adds. I have to surrender it every time I become aware of it. This will not go well, I know, but I don't want my life's ending to be that I was toxic and self-righteous. And I don't know if my last day here will be next Thursday or in 20 years. Whenever that day comes, I want to be living, insofar as possible, in the Wendell Berry words. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. And I want to have had dessert. In the coming week, I hope we will all find times to be joyful, though we have considered all the facts.
To mercy, pity, peace, and love, all pray in their distress, and to those virtues of delight retain their thankfulness, retain their thankfulness. For mercy has a human heart, and pity a human face, and of the human form divine, and peace the human dress, and peace the human dress. Then every one of every kind that prays in deep distress, praise to the human form divine, love, mercy, pity, peace, love, mercy, pity, peace.
It is about time for us to dissolve the picture and fade to a black screen. Before watching a glimpse of what's coming to your screen next Sunday, hear this parting thought from Kimberly Quinn Johnson. She entitled, Fitted for this Day. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones we have been waiting for. You are invited to join the multitudes of UUs watching worship on countless screens, sharing morning assemblies in over 1,000 distinct UU congregations. As we extinguish the chalice, many of whom are saying these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Hi, everyone. I'm Doug Strong, and next Sunday I want to talk about Universalist and Unitarian history and what kept us apart and what brought us together. It is a fascinating history because it's ours. And on Wednesday, May 12, the Unitarian Universalist Association turns 60. Some highlights of that history: in the 1850s, the Universalist Church of America was the fifth largest denomination in the nation. The Unitarians in that time spent a lot of time in New England, although they branched out as well. And when consolidation finally took place, it took over 100 years, my mother went to the convention and she stood up and voted no. And she stuck to it the rest of her life. I'll tell you why. Hope you'll join me next Sunday. Take care. Bye bye.